All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Securing Affordable Housing for Sponsored Refugees, Challenges and Strategies webinar presented by Allies for Refugee Integration. I am Metin Gan, ARI Project Coordinator, and I will be your host for this webinar. Today, also my colleagues Hind and Giselle are here to support me in facilitating this webinar. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Hind. Let's take a quick look at what we have planned for our discussion today. I will begin with the land acknowledgement. Following some quick housekeeping details, I will provide you with some background information about the ARI project, so you have a better understanding of our mission and goals. Then we will have a short survey. Following that, our key speakers, Yasmine, Dossal, and Valerian Marochko, will share their expertise on securing affordable housing for sponsored refugees. Then the floor will be open for your questions. Finally, we will conclude the webinar and provide some final thoughts and takeaways. There is a lot to cover, so let's get started with our land acknowledgement. This webinar is being hosted on the traditional territory of the Wet'nut, Anishinaabeg, and Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations. Toronto, also known as Toronto, is now home to many Indigenous peoples, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. It is important to us from the outset to express our solidarity with Indigenous communities across Turtle Island who continue to experience colonial violence, including intersectional gender-based violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Except for our Indigenous participants, we are all newcomers to this land. Whether your ancestors arrived here centuries ago from Europe or were brought here forcibly from Africa, whether you arrived yesterday for a better life or fled a war seeking refuge in this land, we are all newcomers compared to the First Nations who have been cultivating this land for thousands of years. The subject of today's webinar is housing. Housing is more than a structure. It's about creating a safe and stable environment, and that honors the history of the land and its original caretakers. Today's webinar will explore strategies for securing affordable housing for sponsored refugees against a backdrop of respect for the land we all share and the legacy of its Indigenous peoples. As we delve into the topic of housing for those seeking refuge in this country, let us also remember the lessons of community, respect for the land, and sustainable living that the First Nations have modeled for millennia. Let this acknowledgement guide our discussion today, reminding us of our shared responsibility to respect the land and its first inhabitants. Just a quick reminder for those who have just joined us. This meeting is being recorded. During the Q&A session, if you prefer not to have your question recorded, you have two options. You can type your question in the chat and we will read it for you, or you can ask us to temporarily stop recording and we will resume after your question. We would love to see your faces, especially during the Q&A session. However, to maintain a smooth experience for everyone, we ask you to keep your microphones muted during the presentation. This will help us avoid any potential background noise and disruptions. At OCASI, including virtual spaces, we stand firmly against any forms of racism, sexism, or xenophobia. Our goal is to create a welcoming and respectful space for learning and dialogue. We encourage everyone to engage respectfully and considerately with the views and experience being shared. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the wheel of power and privilege illustrated here. Please take a moment to reflect on it. This wheel illustrates the various factors that can affect our lives, such as our background, wealth, or education. It's important to recognize that these factors often intersect, creating layers of experience that can affect people in complex ways. In conversations like this, it's possible that individuals who feel they have less power might hesitate to speak up. Sorry, please mute yourself. Thank you very much. We are committed to challenge this by creating an environment where all voices are heard and valued equally. If English isn't your preferred language, no worries at all. I can communicate in Kurdish and Turkish. Giselle is here for those who speak French and Spanish. We are here to make sure the language isn't a barrier to your full participation in today's discussion. So feel free to ask your questions in those languages. The RE project began in 2018 in partnership with Refugee 613 with a clear focus on improving collaboration between settlement professions and refugee sponsors to ensure that privately sponsored refugees receive the best possible support. During its first phase, RE conducted comprehensive research and identified specific challenges in the sector. To address these challenges, RE developed a two-dimensional strategy: intentional connection and knowledge exchange events. Through the intentional connection pilot projects, we established a formal partnership between sponsors and settlement agencies. This allowed sponsors and refugees to be connected with a settlement worker both before and after their arrival. And through the knowledge exchange pilot, we brought together sponsors, settlement agency workers, and refugees to organize virtual discussions and information sharing sessions. In 2021, RE entered its second phase, which we refer to as RE 2.0, and this phase is funded by IRCC until April 2025. In this phase of the project, we aim to continue to implement intentional connection and knowledge exchange practices. Through knowledge exchange events, we conduct roundtables and webinars to bring together settlement and sponsor communities to share info and build understanding. And through the Ambassador Agency initiative, we aim to support SASPO partners to implement elements of RE promising practices and continue to learn and share tools in order to increase the service received by privately sponsored refugees. If you have any topic ideas for future webinars, please reach out to me. And as I try to make this webinars as helpful as possible for people who work with sponsored refugees. In terms of intentional connection, RE's objective during this phase is to recruit pairs of service providing organizations, or SPO, and sponsorship agreement holders, or SA, to establish a formal alliance between them. In the first year of this phase, one SPO and one SA, namely the Diocese of Ontario Refugee Support and Immigrant Services Kingston and Area, ISCA, joined forces and became ambassador agencies. With the support and guidance of RE, these agencies collaborated to host various events, including sponsor engagement events. This initiative led to several positive outcomes, including increased awareness of and knowledge regarding the challenges faced by privately sponsored refugees in the region. It also improved connections and collaboration between these agencies. We are currently in the process of recruiting 2 more pairs of SAS and SPOs for the year of 2023 and 2024. The initial deadline for application was November 17. We have received some applications from SPOs. We appreciate that, but there has not been enough interest from SAS. So we extended the deadline to December 15th, which is in 2 days. I won't be able to go into details due to limited time we have here, but if you are a SA or a SPO interested in becoming ambassador agencies, please take a look at the participation guide and the application form in the chat box. I believe Giselle put them in chat box already. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. You'll find my email address on the promotional material, and also I will share it with you after my presentation. Okay, before I introduce our speakers, I would like to invite you to participate like in a brief survey. You will find the survey link in the chat box. I have emailed this to you yesterday, and I know like almost 30, 40 people already did the survey. If you already did it, that's awesome. Thank you very much. If not, just to let you know, this is a 2-minute survey to help us to get to know those attending. Your answers are anonymous, and you can skip any questions that you do not wish to answer. Your input will help us to improve future webinars. Once you have completed the survey, I will introduce our speaker and leave the floor to them. Okay. Also gonna put my email address here in the chat in case you have questions. If you completed the survey, please let us know in the chat box. We will just allow 2 more minutes. Thank you, Michael. Here's Gina, thank you. Awesome. And it will be in the chat box. You can do it while, you can do it during the presentation of mine or other speakers, but I suggest you focus on their speech. Mine is gonna be introduction, but like, if you don't want to miss what they're telling, just leave it for the end. It will be there, and I will not close the survey until tomorrow. Okay. Okay, in today's webinar, we will delve into the crucial topic of securing affordable housing for sponsored refugees. Our speakers will talk about how their organizations help newcomers in securing affordable housing, what challenges do they face, what has changed in the recent years. Also, we would like to hear their perspectives on how the sector can respond to the rising narrative unfairly targeting newcomers and international students, attributing them to the current housing crisis in Canada. The purpose of this webinar is to engage in a genuine process of exchanging knowledge. Overall, today, our goal is to equip ourselves with valuable insights and practical strategies that can contribute to more successful refugee integration efforts. We acknowledge that we have limited time and this extensive subject cannot be covered in an hour-long webinar. However, the intention is to touch upon fundamental aspects and create a platform for you to exchange your knowledge and experiences. Okay, let me introduce our speakers. I will introduce both speakers and then leave the floor to them for their presentations. Our first speaker is Yasmine Dossal. Yasmine has been the Director of Social Services at OCASI in Toronto since 2002, overseeing services for refugees and newcomers, including settlements, resettlement, housing support, mental health services, services for seniors and women, and more. Leading community development programs in Ontario, Yasmine manages initiatives like the Orientation to Ontario and the International Student Connect program, NFF project, and the Ukrainian Housing Host pilot project. Yasmine is also an executive member of the OCASI board and represents the Toronto region. Our second speaker is Valerian Marochko. Valerian is the executive director of the London Cross-Cultural Learner Centre. Before joining the CCLC, he worked for the development of the College Borough in London and as a consultant for the United Nations, the World Bank, Harvard Institute for International Development, international business ventures, and non-governmental organizations. Since 2009, he has led the development of CCLC into an effective multi-service organization focused on refugee resettlement and newcomer settlement services. His passion is creating inter-organizational structures and community supports that aid the successful integration of newcomers in Canada. Born in Romania, he earned a Doctor in Science degree from ENGREF, France, thesis on the effectiveness of public policies, and he has a Master of Business Administration degree from Ivey Business School in London, Ontario. We will start with Yasmine. Yasmine, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself and go ahead. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so Giselle can share your presentation.
Thank you, Mateen. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to begin by telling you that the focus of my presentation is on the programs that COSTI offers under housing and the clients that we work with, primarily refugee claimants and government-sponsored refugees. We unfortunately don't work with private-sponsored refugees, but we could be having them accessing our services, and we must be assisting them with housing. So I'll focus on that, as well as the negative discourse that is there around how newcomers and international students contribute to the housing crisis, how they are the ones who are actually contributing to this crisis. So my focus will be on that. Next slide, please, Mateen. So COSTI has been providing housing services. I've missed it. Mateen? That's right. Thank you. We have been providing services in housing over 30 years. Collectively, in a range of our programs, we serve clients about 7,000 a year. Our eligible clients could be Canadian citizens, permanent refugees, refugee claimants, people who have undocumented people, government-sponsored refugees, domestic violence cases, and many other. Services that we provide are in various languages, an average of 16 languages that we provide our housing services. And an average, we house 200 or 250 clients per month between all our programs. So that means each month we have clients who move out into permanent housing. Next slide, please. So the programs that COSTI offers under the housing is a Housing Hub North York, is Housing Focus Follow-Up Supports, which was previously called the Streets to Home program. I've just missed the slide, it's jumping. We have shelter services that we offer out of 2 hotels, one in the East End and one in the West End. And then we provide services to government-assisted refugees living at our own reception center as well as the hotels. Next slide, please. Our funding for the housing services comes from the City of Toronto Shelter Support and Housing Administration, that they fund not only our housing programs, but also our shelter services. We also get funding from the City of Toronto and the province, which jointly funds the Canada-Ontario Housing Help Benefit program, which actually helps a lot of refugee claimants move out into permanent residence while they're living in shelters or in hotels. And then we get funded by IRCC, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, that funds our government-assisted refugees under the Resettlement Assistance Program. Next slide, please. So strategies that we have adopted over the years to help our newcomers and refugees find affordable housing is something that we are very proud of and that we keep building over the years. And I think that has been more or less our success in helping clients find affordable housing. So we have built a lot of relationship with property management companies across the GTA. I think we have almost all property management companies listed with us, whether they're big time, medium, or small time, and we have a very good relationship with them. We have relationship with private landlords who have housed our clients in the past. We keep in touch with them. We get feedback from them about how our clients have been, how they've been, whether they've been happy with our clients or not. And whenever there's been an issue, we've always intervened with them to make sure that the issue gets resolved. We're always in touch with our landlords, so we follow up once we place the clients in the house, just to make sure that there are no issues with the tenant or the landlord. We also have very good relationship with real estate agencies. So they are also part of our database that helps us actually find affordable housing. We hire a landlord liaison staff solely whose job is to reach out to landlords and property managers and build a landlord database. This role is being funded to us by the federal government. We have found this to be a really good practice, because the focus of this person is basically to tap onto all kinds of landlords, build our database, and talk to them about our programs and services, and just continue to have a relationship with them. We also go, the job of the landlord liaison is also to educate the landlord and the property managers about our organization, the work we do, and the clients we serve. And that's very crucial, because once they have a relationship and they know your organization, it actually builds credibility and a good working relationship. Next slide, please. We also provide incentives to landlord. In a way, I call it an incentive, as renting their several units. So we sometimes, when we know of a lot of refugee claimants moving out because they've got their COB application approved, or we know a lot of government-sponsored refugees are going to be moving out in a short period of time, we try to block some units. And this has been very successful with us, because the landlords know us, that they will block the unit, so that we can actually use the units when we want to place clients in housing. And we did a lot of that when the Syrians were here. We actually blocked 11 units in one building, because the Syrian refugees wanted to live together in a community. And so we found a management company that had a building in not a very remote area, but a place where clients were happy to move but wanted to move together as many families, because they had befriended themselves in the hotel while they were living. So 11 units were blocked for us, and we moved all the 11 families into that one unit, which actually created a very nice community and support system for the families that move in. So we try that strategy as often as we can. We also do a lot of advocacy on behalf of our clients, the benefits of renting to our clients, whether they are government sponsored refugees or whether they're refugee claimants, about the steady income that they will have. As a result, we would share the income support letter with them for government sponsored refugees, or we'll sort of share a reference letter or character letter for refugee claimants, informing them that they are keen to settle into this new country, they are law abiding. Because when they live with us in shelters, we have a sense of the kind of person and family they are, so we advocate for them. We also communicate and mediate between landlords and clients on a regular basis. And we provide details of staff they can connect with at any given time. Not necessarily a staff that has been attached to that particular landlord for the family, but sometimes it's the housing managers, it's the general managers, it's the frontline staff. So they have a lot of details about our staff. So on average, we move about 200 and 250 clients per month out into the community. Next slide, please. Talking about housing context, and I think Mateen also alluded to it at the beginning of his presentation, it is a national crisis and it is a complex issue. And there are many factors that contribute to it. So to unfairly to think that it's the newcomers or international students who are singly responsible for it is an unfair allegation, and to assume there is a lack of affordable housing, and the numbers are high. The newcomers are coming, but the housings are not being built to commensurate and compare them to the numbers. Initially, in the housing sector, affordable housing was defined as 30% of your gross income. So if you were earning, so one bedroom apartment would cost 2,600 right now. For that, you should be earning about 7,800 a month, and your annual salary has to be 93,000, which is just impossible right now for us. At least in downtown Toronto, it's very difficult to find a one bedroom place. But an average people that we send for single bedroom into the community or in downtown, their income is 31,000, 35,000 a year. For them to be able to afford this, it's just that entire income goes to the salary. So it's a bit of a crisis, and the terminology affordable housing has to be redefined. Next slide, please. So, like I said, The federal government is rapidly increasing its annual immigration target, but not paying attention to the lack of affordable housing, which is causing this negative publicity. Uh, Apparently, in one of the papers that I was reading, that we need about 5.8 million new homes by 2030 to actually tackle the affordability crisis, and it's going to take a long time for the government to start building homes. This kind of crisis is basically causing the shift in public sentiments about immigrants and international students. Next slide, please. So, 3 in 4 Canadians say that increasing immigration level has worsened housing crisis and added strain on the healthcare system, which could be true. They may not necessarily be against immigration of new people, newcomers coming to the country, but they feel it has got to do with them because the government is not proportionately building more homes in order to be able to accommodate the newcomers. Only 9% of Canadians want Canada to welcome more immigrants. And these research they vary from time to time. And due to the housing costs, a record number of people have left Ontario in 2022. According to Stats Canada, 49,000 people moved out of Ontario in 2022, and most of them moved to other provinces like Alberta and Nova Scotia, and some to New Brunswick because of housing was affordable. There were more opportunity for jobs, and of course, the quality of life was much better. So, a house in Alberta would cost a little over $430,000 compared to a house in Toronto, which would be almost $830,000 minimum. So there's a huge difference in what you can afford here in Ontario compared to what you can afford in Alberta. Next slide, please. So one of the things Mateen suggested, how can we respond to rising narrative targeting newcomers and international students? So whether they're newcomers, refugee, international students, I feel we need to highlight their contributions. The cultural and educational contribution that these newcomers and international students bring to the community has a positive impact on our local art, cuisine, academic institution. It just enriches the fabric of Canada. The economic benefits that newcomers and international students bring to the company is great. It's huge. They fill the gap of the labor force. They contribute to the labor force. They bring diverse skills, and they are obviously, in the long run, it has an impact on the economy. They pay their taxes. They spend money on housing, etc., and other necessities. So it accelerates the economic growth. Now, international students actually contribute $22 billion in terms of fees to the economy of Canada. So all the fees that goes to universities. Newcomers also, when they come, some of them bring money, some of them come here and work. So their contribution is a lot more. Next slide, please. We need to also present logical counter arguments to dispel the misconception so that international students, like newcomers and international students, often rent, initially they only rent places, small homes or apartments, and they contribute relatively to a small percentage of the overall population. Also, we have an aging population, and Canadians are having fewer children and need a lot more manpower for the growth of the economy. In 2022, our percentage of seniors compared to our population was 37 million, and the seniors was 6.9 million, which is 17%. They expect by 2040 our percentage of seniors comparatively will become 25%. So that's going to impact our economy grossly. Also, we need to share success stories of newcomers and international students who have overcome challenges and made significant contribution to their communities. So I have always believed that stories are a powerful way in reshaping people's perception, the community's perception. And we know that newcomers who've come, and I go back to the Syrians because we worked with a very large population that arrived in Toronto. But if you know of the Syrian family, Haddad family, that moved to Nova Scotia and started the chocolate factory, Peace by Chocolate, is now has 60 people working under him. He's got a chocolate that's caught on and is popular not only in Ontario, but also in New Brunswick. So he's hired more people, and this is in 2016 he came. So it's barely been 6 years, but the contribution he's made, contribution from the Paramount owner who has started so many chains of his food chain and has hired so many refugees when they arrived in Canada and contributed. And even now, in the times of refugee claimant crisis, they were out there, sharing food and to the shelter. So it speaks, but we don't generally share these success stories. And other newcomers who have contributed in many different ways, I think are important for us to keep sharing, not only within our agency, within our sector, but more and more on social media, more on the news, so that the perception of newcomers or international students or refugees is reshaped. So I think that's my piece. Thank you, Mateen.
Thank
I'm
you very
happy
much,
to take
Yasmine.
any questions.
Yeah, we will take the question after Valerian's presentation. I myself have questions, but I'm going to be patient and wait. Giselle, can you stop sharing your screen so Valerian can go ahead and share his screen? Thank you very much, Yasmine.
Not at all. You're welcome.
Valerian, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can see my presentation. And good morning if you're in British Columbia or another Western province. The London Cross Cultural Learner Centre is a resettlement agency, but we also offer settlement programming, and notable for privately sponsored refugees and the sponsors is the fact that we do the language assessment for everyone that needs language training in London area, but also around London, going north to Sarnia, to Exeter, and south to St. Thomas, Tilsonburg. And we occasionally collaborate with private sponsors when we have complex cases. Our organization, just trying to resettled 1,037 government-sponsored refugees last year, and we found housing for 300 families, like 300 housing units. On top of that, we have a very small reception center for refugee claimants, and would say also our staff that works not federally funded, but who works in helping refugee claimants have helped quite a big number of the 800 clients that we served to connect them to housing or find housing for them. I would like to focus first on the factors to consider when approaching the need for housing of the refugees. One of the main factors to consider is the family composition. And you see a family size graph. Many of those who arrive as a family of one, they are also adult children of more extended families, and sometimes they move in together, but it's still a big number of over 100 families of one that we received last year. Housing singles is difficult, and even more difficult when they're traumatized and have to deal with a completely new country, new climate, new way of living. They have to share bathrooms, and having one-bedroom apartment for singles, the budget would not afford, and they would have rooms in various houses. Also, families that are more than 6 are difficult to house because landlords are not so eager to accommodate family with a big number of children. They are concerned of wear and tear of the house in general. The budget that governments to assist the refugees receive for rent is not enough. There's also a housing supplement allowance, and this has not been updated for quite a number of years. Although more recently, IRCC had a pilot with a housing top-up initiative. So for specific complex cases, when we have a lease signed and there's not enough money in the budget, they might allow extra money for the period that people receive the what is called RAP income support. Families who receive Canada Child Benefit, they have adequate, especially if they have more than 2 children, more adequate funding to rent houses or apartments. It is considered by RCC that 42% of the child's benefit could go to housing, because that's the average in Canada. Although, it could be argued that the child benefit should go to the needs of children and not necessarily to housing. The vacancy rate in London is low. It's been low, 1.3, 1.6 in the last couple of years. And the availability of units is better from April to August, because London is a city town. And when the colleges and university students come, there's a higher pressure on housing. This does not include the international students. Also, we'll have to consider, is the landlord a corporate landlord, and is it the landlord an individual landlord? Some people have a second or third home that they buy as an investment properties, and some of them they're willing to rent to refugees. Those individual landlords, the first thing is to know who they are, and this is usually realized through the connections with other individual landlords, real estate agents, and then the conversation would start about the benefits of renting to newcomers, to refugees particularly. More in detail, there are advantages with small individual landlords. Sometimes the price is negotiable. They would accept sometimes for the newcomer to pay half the rent until they receive the child benefit. Rental application is not mandatory for some of them. They sometimes donate furniture, contribute actually to settle the newcomer. They do accept many times large families, the laundries in the house. And if there's a chance, the landlord speaks one of the languages of newcomers, it's even easier communication. It's also easier communication because we don't we call the decision maker, like the housing coordinators would be talking to the person who makes the decision compared to the corporate housing providers. But the issues we notice sometimes renovation is not done on time before moving in. Repairs take longer time. and there are follow-ups, more follow-ups from the housing coordinators with the individual landlord. The corporate housing providers, they all have their process. Again, they don't accept large families because they respect the housing rules, the bylaws. Another disadvantage is the rental application is a process, and sometimes by the time we apply, the housing unit is gone, and they consider application against other applicants. And some of those other applicants might have credit, might have other feature of as a tenant, like a history, referrals from previous landlords. That would be an advantage compared to newcomers. And the advantages is that most of the time repairs would be taken care right away. Sometimes there are special offers. It was more frequent when the vacancy was higher. Now it's less likely. There are web portals for tenants and for the application, and most of the time the tenants receive the unit properly renovated, and if it's not, it's always taken care of without too much hassle. So, as Yasmine mentioned, partnership development is very important. We just hired a landlord liaison to develop those partnerships with the landlords, to do the outreach and look at like new developments and talk to the people who develop new housing, some of it even affordable housing. Although it's very difficult in London, there are thousands of families and many years of wait list to get into social housing. But even the market units, they're new units, they're good units, so keeping an eye on the developments is very important. We invite the partners to service provider organization events such as anniversaries or AGMs, and the local immigration partnership, London Middlesex, is recognizing every year landlords on special occasions. And we work for both the landlord and the client, the newcomer client. We're kind of in a broker position. If any of them have a problem, we would facilitate the conversation with the other party. And some of them, like in terms of the landlord, they just need education, and they need to be reassured if anything happens, they could always call the Cross-Cultural Learner Center, and we'll be working towards a solution together with them. So basically, the housing coordinators are on the resettlement assistance program, the focal points of contact, but resettlement assistance program is a short-term program. We like to call it 6 weeks of service. After people move out, they will have settlement counselors who would be following up, and that could provide some confusions to landlord if they don't have, to talk to the same person. And we have to enable internally the collaboration between the housing coordinator in the resettlement program with the settlement counselors outside the settlement program. The challenges that we face, as you know, the rental prices keep going up. London was last year like the biggest increase in rental prices that happened over the last 2 decades. Like we had 30% increase for the asking price. Sometimes the initial payments that are processed through direct deposit are not processed within the 3 week. We aim to move people as soon as we can, and that delay in the processing of the payment would not allow us to to make the deposit for the unit, and that would delay and we lose sometimes units because we don't have the payment processed. The complex families, like we're looking for more bedrooms, like houses. Some landlords would be even discriminatory, not renting to people of a certain origin, and or if they have a big number of children, like 7 children, they're concerned about wear and tear, and we have to be very firm in communicating that the rules in terms of discrimination with regards to, let's say, the refugee status, ethnic origin, the family, how big is the family, and we talk to the landlords about that. But still, it's very difficult. We had a couple of families, over 20 people, and under the Canadian standard, there were 3 families, but prior to coming to Canada, they were living together. And then we have the mother-in-law who wants her son to live very close, and the daughter-in-law that would like to stay away as far as possible from the mother-in-law. So try to negotiate the fact that also one of the 3 families, so to speak, got a better house, because it just happened at that point in the market, there was a wonderful unit available, and we cannot ensure the same standard for the other 2 family within the larger family. And it requires a lot of explanation and how the housing process works. We had a family of 23 coming from a very tight-knit family, coming from a refugee camp. We had children who were born in refugee camp, and it's very important to find adequate housing for such families. Some of the best practices, as I mentioned, look at the client needs and focus the housing search with the right landlords for specific family, and knowing the difference between it's completely different approach with individual landlords and corporate landlords, but the relationships are very important. Building those relationships with both type of landlords is essential. Finding housing with a mode of arrival to Canada would be great. We set it as an internal target, because if we don't, we would have to ensure, if people stay longer in the hotel, that children go to school, and the sooner they start their journey in Canada with the roof over their heads, it's benefit for everyone. And it just, I hope somebody would calculate, how much results in benefit it results if a newcomer, let's say, stay in temporary accommodation just 1 month compared to 2 or 3 months. But we'll leave that task to people who are the economists, and they would enlighten us. But securing affordable housing that's within the budget, and particularly we have to watch people who move onto Ontario Works. Not all the government-sponsored refugees would find jobs and have or self-employment income enough to pay for the rent, and if they end up on Ontario Works. So we have to watch the budgets that we look now is something that the housing unit would be feasible even if they move to Ontario Works. We look at housing unit that is safe. We do a complete inspection of the property. All of the properties are inspected before moving in. And people who are, when they move in, they're assigned a life skill worker, would show how to use the appliances, where to recycle, how to take the bus from that neighborhood, how to prepare children to go to school, and also where to do the shopping. And these are people, some of them, they've been refugees before and came to Canada a while ago, and now they work as life skilled workers, and they explain how they could manage their life in the new neighborhood. And if it's safe, if it's close to school, close to transportation, we consider that an adequate housing. So it has to be affordable, but also has to be adequate to the needs of the refugees. Just to give an example, a family with a child that needs extensive follow-ups at the children's hospital, ideally would be housed close to the hospital. So it could be even, if possible, at walking distance. So they could manage the needs for their child. In London, for the government-assisted refugees, the average stay for the last half of our fiscal year, which starts in April, was around 35. By family size, if you see the most difficult is for a family of two. So this is a family of two, let's say a couple without children, they cannot find within the budget something that would fit them, and it's the most difficult, like one-bedroom apartments with a very, very limited budget. The Cross Cultural Learner Center did a strategic review a few years ago, just when the pandemic started, and it was identified that we should provide permanent housing. And the Cross Cultural Learner Center has bought a land at 763, 769 Dundas Street in the Old East Village in Ontario, in London. And we're looking at building 2 units, a smaller unit facing Dundas Street, and a tower in the back that would have around 200 units. And we are looking at 30% of them to be affordable. And we're aiming to take a loan from CMHC through the co-financing program. So it would be kind of one of the unique initiatives that is specific to newcomers, and newcomers who've been in Canada, who arrived in the last 5 years, and they don't have the income to support market rates, would be prioritized for this housing. We will be aligned with the social housing from the City of London. We're working to build more partnerships. We have an architect. We started the site plan consultation, so hopefully in a year or so, we will have the shovel in the ground. There are new help available from the federal government through CMHC, and we possibly would have 40% of the 200 units affordable. We're also including 3-bedroom units, which are they're rare in London area, and have also this housing close to the London Cross Cultural Learner Center. If we have mass arrival or so, and there's availability, we could book some units like Yasmine mentioned with the Syrian arrival, and that would facilitate the newcomer housing. This was my presentation, and I was talking, I didn't watch the chat, if there's anything that I should respond, but I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, Valerian, thank you very much. Yeah, folks are chatting in the chat box. It's serving well, and they're answering each other. There is some conversation going on about how privately sponsored refugees are treated differently than refugees who arrive here have no support, no sponsors. And I appreciate that, like Nomina, you mentioned that. But as I said, this webinar is about privately sponsored refugees, as the title promises. But I'm happy to have a chat and give you some information about what the settlement service can help you in what problem you have. Just email me, please, afterwards. I'll get in touch with you. We will have a chat. But let's allow folks to ask their questions about today's subject. And I appreciate that. You're more than welcome to email me. We will have a chat about that. And I saw one question asking, will you share the presentation? Will you share the slides with them? I think this question was for Yasmine. I can
Sure.
email if you allow me. Sure, okay. Valerian?
Yes.
Okay, please email your presentation to me. I will email it to participants. So Bill is asking a question. Yasmin, are you able to see the chat box?
I am just going to look at it. 1 second.
Okay.
I can respond, and Valerie, you can also respond. The question is, since COSTI doesn't work with privately sponsored newcomers or their sponsors, we could say that privately sponsored newcomers with the support of their sponsors are in competition with COSTI in finding housing. This puts privately sponsored newcomers at a disadvantage without the benefit of resources. I'm not going further, but I get a sense that we can help privately sponsored refugees finding housing. One of the advantages that the private sponsors have money for funding for housing. So we can help them find affordable housing with the finances that the private sponsors give. So like Valerie alluded in his conversation, in his presentation, that because government-sponsored refugees do get financial assistance, it may not be enough for singles or couples, but because of the child tax benefit and additional allowances, they end up managing to find affordable housing, but again, can't last. But if you have the financial assistance, which is you're actually helping them and paying for their housing, we can definitely help you. That's not an issue. We may be getting sponsored refugees coming through our doors at various locations from where we operate, but we might not know they're privately sponsored unless they don't declare that they are privately sponsored refugees looking, or unless the sponsors don't approach us and tell us we need help with housing. We wouldn't know that they're privately sponsored refugees. So definitely, if you want us to help your clients find housing, do get in touch with us and we will see how we can. And as long as you tell us we are privately sponsored, then the advantage of that we know there is some financial assistance available for these people. So it'll be easier to help them find housing. I hope that helps, Bill.
I would add to that two items. One, landlord education done by the resettlement agencies help also private sponsors. And second, we write a letter outlining the budget and everything, and you know, we could share the template. This person is the case would be a privately sponsored refugee by a group. To become a private sponsor refugees, the group ensures that this person has this budget over the following year, and that could be convincing. I'm personally receiving calls sometimes from landlords. Can you confirm that this person, you know, is refugee and they have this budget? So it doesn't matter for the landlord if it's coming from the government or it is, let's say, a diocese or another sponsorship agreement holder that could confirm on behalf of the group. So I think that's important. They need to have people sometimes, particularly the corporate people, to have something on file, and that would be, a practice that could help, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Bill, if you want to elaborate, if you want more clarification, you can just unmute yourself, speak, put in the chat box. There is a question from Sarah. I'm wondering if you also provide housing support for privately sponsored refugees as well. Sarah, your question is for both speakers or just?
Yes, for both speakers.
Okay.
Valerie, do you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
It's very similar to what Bill asked. We can definitely help if privately sponsored refugees are sponsors are looking to help their refugees that they've sponsored. I can send you my email address, and I've just shared on the chat my contact number, and I'd be happy to connect you to a housing manager. Because privately sponsored, private sponsors have the financial assistance, it would be easy for us to assist them with the finances available. Otherwise, it becomes challenging if people are on Ontario Works or ODSP, because finding affordable housing is a huge challenge. We can help, but it might take time.
Thank you, Yasmine. Appreciate it.
Just to add to that, like the resettlement assistance program funded by the government does not include, assisting privately sponsored refugees with housing, but the settlement programs, privately sponsored refugees, they have access. And sometimes we helped. There were family breakups where, a sponsor came and said, well, can we work together to find a solution for this family? So the settlement program, unfortunately, is not specific in having housing funding like housing search positions, but the settlement counselors or information orientation service provider, they might have information where to go and could support and work together with the for the privately sponsored refugees if they come and ask for service, because they are eligible for service.
Thank you, Valerie. Yasmine, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because Valerie actually reminded me. So yes, through our settlement workers, we can offer services. But like I mentioned earlier on in my presentation, we've called a housing help hub we have. And that hub actually focuses on any and everybody who walks into our door and looking for assistance for housing. So other than the program, the government-sponsored refugee program, as well as our shelter services, we have a separate standalone housing help program funded by the city, in which we help everybody who walks in. And like Valley gave an example, when there's a breakup in the family, when people have lost their jobs, have lost their housing, we not only help them find housing, we also help them retain housing. If they have missed their rent and they are being evicted, we also help provide them financial assistance to protect them from eviction.
Thank
So
you very
yes.
much. Thank you. Ray, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation, first of all. Second, I had two questions in regards to the presentation about the reception house. Is there a way that you can elaborate on how the intake process works, and how long does individuals wait to get secured housing? Maybe I'm misunderstanding a little bit. Or is there a website that I can visit so maybe I can get further information regarding the reception house?
Valley, do you want to go first, or should I? Go ahead.
We have two reception houses in London. One is for the government assisted refugees, and another one is for non-government assisted refugees. But the majority and what is prioritized is refugee claimants, and that's for temporary housing. until we find permanent accommodation. Many refugee claimants in London now, they go to shelters like Mission Services and because we don't have the capacity. That like housing for refugee claimants particularly, a network of volunteers, they would be supporting. So because the staff, the funded staff that we have, it's not sufficient to respond to the demand. So we could possibly talk to you,
Yeah,
provide
we're trying to
advice, provide
implement.
contacts, but not necessarily can guarantee that the person would get a temporary accommodation, if
Of
that's what
course.
you're asking for.
Yeah, we can take it offline. I'm trying to implement one in Guelph. So trying to get a little bit information on how the reception houses work outside of Guelph, and then hopefully build one here.
Definitely, please contact me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're on mute, Metin.
Okay, I muted myself, sorry. We have a comment message from Christina. We have experienced that many settlement agencies do not provide housing supports for privately sponsored refugees, which leaves sponsors without the benefit of the organization clout of these settlement agencies in terms of negotiating with the landlords, etc. Individual sponsors do not hold that kind of negotiation power. Are there resources for individual sponsors in terms of negotiating current housing challenges? Private sponsors are required to provide the wrap amounts, same as the government-sponsored refugees for housing. There may be sponsors who are able to provide more, but it is not required.
I can go ahead if you want, Valley.
Yes, please.
Okay, so in Toronto, there are, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 9 housing help centers, and they're located across the GTA. And that is open to anybody privately sponsored. People who've lost their housing for whatever reason can walk into the door and get assistance for housing. You're right, not all settlement agencies have housing programs, and they don't know anything about housing. But COSTI, being a large organization, has a housing help program, a standalone program specifically for newcomers, claimants, anybody. So they can come to the North York hub. So if you look up housing help centers in the GTA and see which is closest to where you live, you will be able to walk into the housing help center and seek help for housing. That doesn't mean that you cannot visit any other housing help centers. You can go anywhere you wish to choose. We are located in North York and Jane and Wilson intersection, but you can access any housing help centers and they will be able to help you with finding housing.
Can I just, sorry, I was the one who just posed that question, and thanks so much, Yasmine, for that. We work with sponsors all over the province of Ontario, and it's great to hear of the supports available for people settling in the GTA. But our experiences with other regions are quite different. So I guess my question wasn't necessarily pointed at any particular speaker, but just a general question of, are there supports, national resources that would assist sponsors in various provinces in different cities and different regions with more sort of general tips or strategies in terms of how to negotiate the current housing challenges? And I know things are very regionally based and conditioned when it comes to these kinds of things. The majority of the sponsors we work with are not in the GTA. So it's kind of hit and miss in terms of whether there are local organizations that can be a support. Yeah.
I can attempt. Go ahead, Valerie.
Sorry, Yasmin. Christina, like as long as you're looking some support within Ontario, I'm happy to help you get in touch with the settlement sectors in your province. And as I said, like the ambassador agency, one of the things we are trying to do is to fill this gap. We know sponsors need that support, maybe some strategies to reach out to landlords and but they don't have resources. But there could be service providing organizations in your region willing to help you with this, but they are not aware of privately sponsored refugees. That's why we have Allies for Refugee Integration projects. If you get in touch with me, and then we will look at the settlement sectors in your region, and if we can form sort of like formal allyship between you, it might help in the maybe not in the short term, but it might build up, and in the future it might be useful for you to secure affordable housing.
Thanks.
There
That's
are
really
local,
informative.
sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
There are local immigration partnerships all across Ontario. So
Yes.
sometimes in smaller communities, it's like local development agencies, the county, they are involved in the local immigration partnerships. And they have in their mandate to support you, to support newcomers, and including privately sponsored refugees.
Yeah, you're right.
It's Barb Sheffield. I wonder if Christina could identify her location in Ontario?
We're based in Kitchener and St. Catharines, but we work with sponsors literally all over the province.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yasmine, you had something to add. Please go ahead.
No, I mean, you said that contact local agencies within that community because they have robust services, and there are always one large main agency that provides a number of services, including housing. And a lot of these agencies also provide housing other than to government sponsored, but to privately sponsored. But also, there's a good resource called Orientation to Ontario, which is a program that provides all kind of information, including for housing. And you can find that portal on OCASI website and access it and see if you can find any agencies on that resource to help you connect with someone in the particular area that your private sponsors are located.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. May was asking for a contact person. I think you respond to that. Jill is saying, but the landlords are worried that the family cannot afford the rent after the 12th month. And I sorry if I missed this in your presentation. I was busy responding chat. But like, yeah, that's a common concern among GARs and PSRs as well, like private sponsored refugees, doesn't matter if they're assisted by government. Month 13 is the biggest concern for the tenants as well as landlord. And whoever wants to respond first. Thank you, Jill, for asking this question.
May I ask a question?
Sorry, Bashar. Let's get answer to Jill's question, then I will allow you.
Okay, sure thing.
Do you want me to go ahead, Valley, or you want to?
Go ahead. I will add.
So you're very right. After the 13th month, what happens? And a lot of them have either find some kind of jobs, or they end up going on to Ontario Works, which means their benefit, their monthly allowance for rent reduces, and then they have to move to another housing. Again, they fall back. There's a program, especially for government-sponsored refugees. There's a program called Client Support Services, which is a case management program to help families who've moved out of the reception center for a period of 12 to 18 months. So then the CSS staff actually helps them find affordable housing or attaches them. But our focus has always been to help them find some kind of jobs. A lot of them do find jobs. They might be finding cash jobs. I know with refugee claimants, they sometimes insist they want to go into taking a house that the apartment that they've seen, which we know from the income they can't afford, but they insist they want to go into it because they feel they'll manage. And sometimes they're working for cash, and that cash supplements it. But yes, this is a problem, and we always monitoring it through our CSS program to see they don't get evicted, or we help them go into some cheaper housing, or they move location and find something cheaper.
Just to add to what Yasmine said, it depends on level of English, and even with low level of English, recently there were plenty of jobs available, and that could be an incentive. If you want to keep the house, you have to very seriously look for a job, and ultimately people who start in some jobs, they move up and are able to afford that house. Or if we have a disability, then we have time to apply for ODSP or other supports, which will provide a little bit more income that would allow the person to afford that house.
And also based on the income, if the income is not sufficient, they get some kind of subsidy, financial assistance to housing program. It's called the LEAP, Low Energy Assistance Program, and one is called which actually helps them pay off some of their electricity bills and hydro bills if the income level is low. So we find other ways to supplement it, and as Valley rightly said, oh, that's right, it's OESP, Ontario Electricity Support Program. Is it Ontario Electricity Supports Program that we help them with, and that contributes a little bit, but as Valley said, they all end up finding jobs. Sometimes they've found jobs while they're staying with us in the hotel. They're working for some supermarkets, or they've started some construction work, or depend again on the level of language and education.
Thank you,
And
Yasmine.
basically, the lease is for 1 year. Well, in 1 year, lots could happen. The newcomer could move to another community. They could find a job. It's just to reassure the landlord that as a newcomer serving agency, we would reassure them that we will be there and deal with the situation if it happens. There's sometimes ability to apply for some grants and some financial support and so on.
From that perspective, those who get the Canada Ontario Housing Benefit Plan, if they qualify this year, City of Toronto reinstated it in sometime in August. If you're on that plan, then your income is secured for a good 3-4 years. Of course, they review your income every year to see whether they should give you entire 70% of the rent, or they should give you 60% or 80%, depending on if you have found housing. And so that guarantee for refugee claimant is a good one vis-a-vis for government-sponsored refugees.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Bashar, you had a question?
Yes, actually, I'm a housing coordinator from Windsor, Ontario. So it seems like many cities that there is a problem with finding houses, and this. In our city, like we receive around, let's say, 800 people every year, and so far we are managing with finding houses, and we have no shortage of houses. However, my problem is like we find houses, but clients are rejecting these houses, even though that they are good houses, safe houses, affordable within their budget, because we know their budget, taking into consideration the child tax benefit, and also within transportation, public transportation, because if it's not within public transportation, we cannot put families there. So other than this reason, I don't think there's any other legitimate reason to refuse a house. But most of the time they do reject houses, good houses or good units. Reasons are, I don't want to live in an apartment building where I share a laundry. I don't want to live where I have neighbors. I want to live in this certain area only, close to the ethnic stores. I the basement is not in good condition, even though that they don't have to live in the basement. There's only washer and dryer in the basement. Or the house, even though that they can afford it, they want the cheapest thing, the very, very cheap thing. They don't want to spend their money. So we're finding a lot of difficulties with clients, with families, to accept acceptable houses. So are you guys facing these problems? How are you dealing with it? Let's take into consideration that we cannot force them to move from their temporary accommodation. And we have cases that where we sign a lease, but the clients do not want to move from the hotel unless after 10 or 15 days, because they wanna arrange everything in the house before they go there. And also let's remember that families make money when they're at the hotel, because family of 7 or family of 8, they make around $160, $180 every day with food, paying for getting paid for food. And they buy traditional food, which they spend only about $60. They pocket the rest, so they don't want to leave the temporary accommodation very fast. Are you guys facing these problems, and what are your solutions for these?
Okay, before I let Yasmine and Vali answer, actually, Bashar, thank you for sharing this. But actually, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to discuss here, the targeting narrative. I know, like, I don't know. You're in the field, you know better than me in your region. What are the reasons that people are not liking the places? But when we talk about these things, I think we need to be a little cautious when talking about like refugees do not like the houses. I'm not saying this is GAR issue or PSR issue. There are refugees on the street cannot find a room to live in a day, like the winter is coming and they're facing these challenges. Maybe when we talk about these issues, then there could be local issues, they could be like unique issues to some certain, like some families or some certain amount of time you might face these difficulties. But I don't think, like, of course I'll allow our speakers to respond to that, and we have many sponsors here, we have settlement workers. I'm sure that's not what's happening in the rest of the country, because yes, they demand and they have right to demand better houses, but I don't think that's the main issue that this in the sector that we are facing. And I will first ask Yasmin and Vali to add to this point.
Thank you, Mateen. Yeah, we have few and far between cases like that where clients don't want to move if they're in shelters or whether they're living in hotels, the government-sponsored refugees. In both in our operation, food is offered by the hotel, so they don't get any money to purchase food. So, but there are times because they are comfortable or they don't like the housing and they're taking their time. As far as IRCC is concerned and the government-sponsored refugees concerned, we have to do everything we can in our power to find them housing that is affordable and it's within the budget. If for some reason they don't want to take it, again and again they're turning down, we are expected to document that and inform IRCC, and then IRCC generally intervenes if the length of stay has exceeded our contract agreement. IRCC will talk to the family and give them an ultimatum. Unless the reason is very valid, it could be health reason, they're accessing hospitals downtown, whatever. But otherwise, ultimatum is given. For the shelters also, sometimes families are not keen on meeting. Again, then there is we communicate with the city to talk about the issue, but the cases are not that many. You're in a good situation. You have lot of options to share with the clients compared to what we have, and we have managed to kind of find different ways of telling them that we cannot keep them in the shelter for very long, because that's one of the requirements of the city if you found something that you can afford. So we try what we can, but yes, eventually they end up moving out.
Thank you, Yasmin. Valerian?
I would add that we have to acknowledge that this may be related to the coping strategies the refugees developed, prior to coming to Canada, and in the course of time, they would change their strategies for survival and for getting ahead. I would suggest Bashar talks to, if you could talk to your manager. IRCC developed a process for moving to permanent accommodation, and they do provide support to the organizations and to the workers like you for complex cases where, such as you mentioned, and that could be helpful.
Yeah. And those are the protocols that we also follow in our program, like Valley said.
There are
Yeah,
so many questions in the chat, but Bashar, you had.
yeah, thank you for the answers. Yeah, we do have this protocol also, and we do follow it, and we have been in meeting with IRCC, but the number of families rejecting houses is high here. Like, it's not only few cases, and that's mean like rejecting 4 or 5 showing. That's the issue that we're facing. Anyway, thank you for your opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bashar, for your question and comment. We have so many questions in the chat box, but I promise that I will let you go at 2:30. If you are willing to stay a little longer, I'm gonna ask a few more questions. If we run out of time, I will ask our lovely participants to reach out to me or you, the speakers, and ask their questions. Yasmine, Valley, should we add another 5 minutes or?
Okay, with me.
Okay, thank you very much. So Melissa is asking, statistically, do we know how many families, GARs, are successful after the first year? For example, did not default on rent either by employment or moving to OW. I don't know what OW stands for.
Ontario Works.
Ontario Works, okay. Do we have this statistic?
Valley, you want to go ahead?
I'm not aware of any of the clients we serve defaulting on rent.
Yeah, we have the same issue. We haven't had any issues where they've defaulted. Yes, they may have gone on to Ontario Works, and we may have helped them in the transition, but not that we know of anyone who's defaulted.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for your question. Thank you for answers. We have Saya Akbari asking, do you have any information about affordable housing in Red Deer, Alberta?
Contact the resettlement agency in Calgary that might have a resettlement operation in Alberta, or they could, it's Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, CCIS.
Yeah.
They
And
might
also
have
there's an organization called Immigrant Settlement Services, ISS, I think, that provides settlement services and works very closely with the organization that Valley just mentioned. So those are the 2 large ones that operate there, and they would definitely have information. And you can look them up on the website too.
Okay, thank you. Judith is saying, we just mentioned cash jobs. Just to be clear, if a cash job leads to not accurately filling out income tax forms and declaring income, or if anyone on social assistance, ODS or ODSP, is taking cash payment without informing social assistance, they can be subjected to criminal charges. Moreover, cash jobs are often very dangerous. Such employers are not noted for health and safety measures.
Yeah. I can answer that if you want, Valley. Should I go ahead? Yeah. So we, in our orientation, whether it's to government-sponsored refugees or refugee claimants, or to any other person who walks into our housing program, when we talk about affordable housing, we always tell them that if they're earning money, cash, they're expected to declare it at the time when they're filing the income tax. We tell them it's not correct, it's a criminal record. If they don't disclose to us, we wouldn't know. But if they do, and from the very beginning in our orientation, we emphasize the importance of declaring any kind of income that they are getting outside what they get from either Ontario Works or from the federal or the provincial level.
Thank you, Yasmine. Vali?
Nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Wendy says, experience of trauma may impact newcomers' willingness to accept certain housing. It needs to feel safe for them, and Linda adds, safe, affordable, and clean is what the requirement is. Barbara agrees with them. I agree with them. I think this is addressing some of the comments made here. People are thanking and leaving. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess we don't have any questions. If there is a last minute question, please feel free to jump in, unmute yourself and ask your question. If not, we will appreciate if you do post event survey. If what are the things you found beneficial in this event? What are the things we need to improve in the next presentations and webinars? Please let us know. These webinars are for you. These webinars are for you to get some useful information and then come back for the next one, hopefully. Please do the survey. Let us know how we did. It's really important because we need to know what didn't work, what worked well. And I want to thank you for their presentations, Yasmine and Valerian. It was very informative. Actually, I had a question, Yasmine, for you. You shared, I just forgot I was asking everybody's question. You shared that 9% of Canadians welcome immigrants. And this is not the statistic I see in the news. They say
Yes, and this is something that's meant,
yeah, there is a huge.
That's what I said when I talked about it, that some of the stats that I've got it from research here and there, and must have been old, but the numbers keep changing. You probably have the latest number, so I'll go with what you have to say. But there is a general, and it keeps changing, the general discourse that happens that newcomers are contributing. Sometimes newcomers, they don't think are somebody who don't need to come to Canada. They agree that there's a need for them to come, but that's the contributing factor. But on the other hand, the real contributing factor is that the government is not doing its part of proportionately building the housing for newcomers. So by default, they get blamed for the housing crisis, which is not the situation. Also, when newcomers come into Canada, they come to one of the largest cities, which are always overwhelmed and have housing issues. I guess disbursement and fair distribution across Ontario would also be a good strategy for government to look into, so that other rural areas can be developed with communities, and you don't send one or two, but you send a large number to create a community. So yeah, your number must be right. I just got it from one of the
Absolutely. No, I agree that there is a decline in support of immigrants, but also I want to add on what you suggested for us. I think it's very important to change the narrative, the targeting narrative, by stating that, yes, newcomers are coming from other countries, refugees, immigrants, international students, but they're not part of the problem. They're part of the solution. I know a lot of doctors, lawyers come here, they work in construction. So we need to question who built these houses. They're international students, they become engineer and contribute this housing, the buildings, right? So I think for us it's important to shift the narrative from these are the problems to actually know these newcomers are part of the solution, not part of the problem. I just wanted to add that to your point, and thank you again, all of you. Excellent presentations, very informative. I have so many questions, but we ran out of time, and I just want to thank you both and wish everybody a nice day.
Thank you for the opportunity, and we'd be happy to work with anybody who want to get in touch with us. If we can help them in any way, COSTI is happy to do that.
Thank you very much, and happy holidays to everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays to everyone.
Merry Christmas. everyone.
Thank you.